So the other day I was at Best Buy. I noticed they had these bath bombs and they were NASA themed. And of course, being the good science geek I was, I'm like, take my money, and I bought them. And they had various scents, like Earth was supposed to be ocean scented, which, it makes sense. I mean, Earth is 70% water, but then we had the moon, which is vanilla. We had Venus, which is citrus scented. And, that got me thinking, what does space smell like? Because I can guarantee you, it isn't citrus. So let's start our nasal journey of the solar system with space itself, because believe it or not, space itself does have a smell. According to NASA astronaut Don Pettit, the best description I can come up with is metallic. A rather pleasant, sweet metallic sensation. It reminds me of my college summers where I labored for many hours with an arc welding torch, repairing heavy equipment for a small logging outfit. It reminded me of pleasant, sweet smelling welding fumes. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't know that welding smelled sweet, but hey, to each their own. Now there are several different possible explanations for this space smell. First off, although space is empty by just about everyone's definition, it isn't completely empty. There are a few molecules floating around, and those molecules might very well be what causes the smell. The other explanation for this can be that once you expose materials to space, they react strongly with the oxygen when you return it to atmosphere. So it's just like burning materials in air, it just occurs at a much faster rate. It's all oxidation. So this probably explains why space smells a little like burnt steak or just have overall burning smell. Fun fact about space smells is that it is such an integral part of being in space that NASA is actually trying to replicate this smell and use it as part of the training regimen for its astronauts. Before we go any further, just one quick note. Do not attempt to sniff other planets, assuming they actually have an atmosphere. It'll either be cold enough to freeze your lungs or hot enough to scorch them, and they almost all have no oxygen, so you'll die by asphyxiation. Yes, space is trying to kill you. So from space we go to the sun and we'll work our way out from there. Unfortunately, because the sun is made of hydrogen, it really doesn't have a smell. And Mercury doesn't have an atmosphere, so they don't have a smell either. If it does have a smell, it's pretty much ionized metals in its crust, but unfortunately I couldn't find any scientific papers and stuff on what Mercury would smell like. So our first celestial body that has a distinct smell is Venus. Venus has clouds of sulfuric acid, and sulfur has a very distinct smell. It smells like rotting eggs. Basically anything that smells bad has a little bit of sulfur in there somewhere. But of course, it's also an acid, so, it burned your lungs, so there's that as well. Now for Earth, stick your nose outside and take a nice whiff. You're totally capable of doing that. So we go into the ISS. According to NASA astronaut Don Pettit, the ISS smells like a combination machine shop, engine room / laboratory type thing. And of course there is a little bit of BO after all, even though they do shower your creme in a small area with a bunch of other people. And you can't really open a window to get some fresh air. Believe it or not, the smells coming from materials in rockets and the like are very important and a big problem for NASA. It's called toxic outgassing, basically gases coming off of materials, and it can actually be deadly. So they test everything, and I mean everything, before it goes to space to make sure it does not have this problem. The next stop on our journey is the moon, and unfortunately is the last place where we actually definitively know what it smells like. So, the second person on the moon, Buzz Aldrin, says it smells like burnt charcoal. Apollo 17 astronaut Jack Schmidt had this to say about it. All I can say is that everyone's instant impression of the smell was that of spent gunpowder, not that it was metallic or acrid. So again, we have this burning smell. Now, as to why the moon smells, we aren't exactly sure. There are 3 possible causes. First off, when you break certain minerals and rocks, they do release a smell. And this smell can be trapped on the moon's surface until it's brought back into your lunar lander. Secondly, the moon is basically an extremely dry desert. There's no oxygen, there's no water for the minerals to react with. Until, of course, you bring it inside your lander, and then the relatively moist and oxygen-rich atmosphere reacts with the dust, causing the smell. And lastly, and I find most interestingly, is that ions from the solar wind can be trapped when they hit the solar dust, and then once they're brought into your spacecraft, they can evaporate off the dust. So you might actually be smelling the solar wind. Kind of cool, huh? Mars is next, and its atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide, the compound that you breathe out. And as you know, that doesn't really have a smell. You do have some compounds in the rocks, sulfur, acids, magnesium, chlorine, etc., which give it, quote, a slightly acid, gassy smell of sulfur compounds with a chalky, sweet overtone punching through. Because again, NASA has tried to make the smells of all the planets just in case we have to go out there. So next we have the asteroid belt. Most of them have no smell. Like my meteorite here, yeah, it doesn't smell like anything. Mainly because they're chunks of rock and iron, and they don't smell. However, there are a few asteroids that are rich in amino acids, the building blocks of life, and those do have distinct smells. They've been called Brussels sprouts, wet hay, tar, or even just a bit musty. Fun fact is that these asteroids may have originally brought the building blocks of life, amino acids, to Earth. Then there's Jupiter, the king of the planets. As you might expect with such a huge planet, it's got different layers, and each layer has its own smell. You got layers rich in ammonia, which is kind of cleaning fluid. Then we have hydrogen cyanide, which smells like bitter almonds, and unfortunately, yes, it's that cyanide, the poisonous type. And we have hydrogen sulfate, which is, again, got sulfur in it, so it's kind of rotten egg sulfur smell. And unfortunately, all of these are deadly in high doses, so you wouldn't want to smell it anyway. Now, the smelliest place in the entire solar system is Jupiter's moon Io. Jupiter's moon Io is covered in sulfur, both elemental sulfur and sulfur dioxide. In fact, if you take a look at a picture of Io, you can see these sulfur deposits from space, so you can definitely tell that it smells like rotten eggs, old gym shorts, smelly socks, and the like. Now, Saturn, like the Sun, is mostly hydrogen and hence has no smell, but its moon Titan is one of the most interesting spots in the solar system, and it does. Titan is the only place in the solar system, like Earth, that has weather, except there, instead of raining water, it's raining down hydrocarbons, mostly carbon dioxide and methane. But among that hydrocarbon soup that's on the surface there, it has significant concentrations of benzene. And benzene smells sweet. So you got this distinct kind of sweet smelling thing. Benzene is a component in gasoline, so kind of that smell. And as if it wasn't bad enough, it also is a carcinogen. So you might get cancer by sniffing it. Again, I tell you, space is trying to kill you. Then there's Uranus, and yes, I'm pronouncing it Uranus. Get your mind out of the gutter. So, Uranus is mostly hydrogen and methane, which is odorless. It does have hydrogen sulfide and, again, ammonia, so that's cleaning liquid and, unfortunately, rotten eggs. So if you want to say it, yes, Uranus does smell like farts. Shocking, I know. Unfortunately, we don't really have much data on Neptune or Pluto, so we're going to have to skip them and go straight to the Oort cloud with comets. Now, I haven't sent many probes to comets, but we have sent one to comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko. I don't know. Sorry for pushing that name. This has a lot of the same compounds as Jupiter, with ammonia, cyanide, and hydrogen sulfide. So cleaning solution, almonds, rotten eggs, all of them trying to murder you. And that's it for the solar system. However, thanks to the scientific method called spectroscopy, which is the analyzing the light that comes off of materials, we can actually determine what chemicals are present and therefore what their smells are in distant nebula. So our first nebula we're going to talk about is nebula W30H. It's about 6,500 light years away and has large amounts of alcohol. Although this is mostly in the form of methanol, which is rubbing alcohol. We recreationally drink ethanol. Both of them smell the same and smell, like alcohol. Except methanol is poisonous, so if you did happen to stick your head in the cloud of this nebula, you would definitely die. By the way, side note, some people are talking about inhaling alcohol vapor nowadays, and this is generally a very, very bad idea because it goes directly into your bloodstream through your lungs. And this makes it really easy to overdose and go straight from being buzzed to alcohol poisoning quite quickly. And your body has no defense mechanism against it. After all, it's not like you can vomit up your lungs. So don't do it, bad idea. Moving on. Our last stop in this tour is the nebula Sagittarius B2. In addition to having the alcohol that we mentioned in the previous nebula, this one also has ethyl formate. This is a component of both the smell of rum and raspberry. So kind of like raspberry rum cocktail, maybe? So if we've learned anything about this tour of the smells of space, remember, space is trying to kill you, and to bring your air freshener because it mostly smells bad. Remember to like and subscribe, and if there's any topic that you think deserves some sciencing, please let me know in the comments below.